This is the Building Automation Monthly Podcast with Phil Zito, episode 107. Hey folks, Phil Zito here, and welcome to episode 107 of the Building Automation Monthly Podcast. And in this episode, we are going to be continuing on from last week's episode 106, on the topic of systems integration. And we are going to be focused in on kind of the why behind systems integration. So last week's episode, depending on when you're listening to this, episode 106, was focused in on specifically what is systems integration. We talked through the different types of systems integration and gave several examples around each type of systems integration. Now that you understand what systems integration is, now it's time to look at the why and the how. And so we're going to focus in on the why in this episode, and then we're going to focus in on the how in episode 108. So why are you doing the integration? That is the first question. Whenever you start to discuss systems integration with a customer, or you're on a job, you should go and understand the why. And you may be thinking to yourself, Phil, I don't need to know the why. I just need to know what's specified, or I just need to know what the customer wants. I would disagree. I think you very much need to know the why, because the why is going to be how you're going to implement the integration. Let's take a basic lighting integration into a building automation system using BACnet IP. So pulling a lighting system into a building automation system, it's pretty basic integration. I mean, you would go discover the IP address, you discover device instances, you would go and map in points. You may or may not need to work with the lighting vendor to understand what each of the points mean, but as far as integrations go, I mean, it's pretty much as simple as they come. The thing is if you don't understand why you're doing this integration, you can actually go and do it multiple different ways. And you may be saying to yourself, but Phil, you said it's pretty simple. It's just BACnet IP. I discover the points and I map them in. Well, yes, that is absolutely right. That is the process you're going to go about. But let's think about this for a second. You map in a lighting level and you map in a lighting command. So now you have to say, am I going and doing this because the customer wants the lighting system to be on a single graphic that folks are using from their phone and they're able to manipulate temperature and lights at the same time? Is that what they want? Do they simply want that whenever the building's occupied, the lights get enabled and then the lighting panels or the local light switches take control? That's two totally different whys around the integration. You know, what you're going and achieving there is still an integration, but let's just think about BACnet, right? BACnet has a priority array, and if you don't know at all what BACnet is or priority arrays, I'll link to some BACnet resources in the show notes, and you'll find out more about that towards the end of the episode. But priority arrays essentially say who has priority as far as commands and control inputs go. And so if you're saying the lighting system has priority, that is completely different than the building automation system having priority. What I mean by that is if the lighting system has priority, it doesn't matter if the customer is trying to control the lights from their phone, it's going to do whatever the lighting system wants it to do. And vice versa, if the BAS has priority, then it's going to do whatever the BAS wants it to do, the lights are, instead of the lighting panels. So that is a totally different way of doing the exact same integration. And it's these little nuances that tend to cause warranty issues, that tend to cause callbacks. Folks are like, man, the integration's not working. And it's like, no, the integration is actually working perfectly. And then you get into these arguments because by technical standards, the integration is working perfectly. It is mapped in. You have the points. They're not offline. You can control them. But the customer's perception of what the integration should be doing is that they should have command via their phones, whereas Your perception is, hey, I just mapped the points in. If the lighting system goes and overrides that, well, that's not my responsibility. And that's how a lot of folks approach these things. And they don't understand the why behind the integration. So how do you find out that why, especially in a contracted environment where you're maybe under the mechanical contractor and the access to the owner is protected by multiple layers? Well, I mean, the simplest way is to simply submit an RFI and ask why. But you've got to be careful of that because you may say, why are we doing the integration? And the response you will get is, well, because the customer wants control over the lights. So you need to be more specific when you're going about asking your why. You need to ask for examples like, how will the customer be controlling the lights once they're integrated into the building automation system? Will they be using a phone? Will they want the building automation system to take control? Now, you may be thinking to yourself, man, this is a lot of work. Why don't I just integrate it? Well, you've got to go and think about it from this perspective. And I always used to tell my guys this when we were in the field. You can go and understand things by being that person who asks a lot of questions up front and then understanding it, putting in that hard work, and then not have to do those warranty calls, have a more satisfied customer, and it just makes everything down the line of the project so much more efficient. Or you could just flat out follow the spec. No one's going to fault you. You'll pass commissioning most likely. But then when the customer goes and starts actually using the building, you're going to start to get warranty calls. Things are going to start to get overridden, and you're going to run into a lot of issues. And that is why it is so important to understand the why. Now, closely related to the why is what outcome are you looking for? This is another question you want to understand. Now, outcome and why are actually different. So why is the use case, okay? So if I said, why are we doing this integration? The answer you should get is not to save energy. You're looking for the use case. You're not looking for the outcome. It's two totally different things. Folks tend to get this mixed up. I do it myself quite often. And it's something that you need to continue to make yourself aware of, is the difference between the why and the outcome. The why is the use case. That is, what do you want this to do? How do you want it to function? Okay? Whereas the what, the outcome, that is the business, what's the word I'm looking for? I wanted to say, that's the business, we'll just say reason. There was another word I was thinking of, but I just can't pull it out of my head for some reason. But that's the business reason, the business objective, the business justification for actually doing this. Because no one just, well, I don't want to say no one. I've been at some buildings where it seemed like they just did it because they could do it. But most projects, most owners don't go about just doing an integration because they could do an integration. They're like, yeah, I can integrate everything. Woohoo! No, most of the time there's a business objective. So you would say, what is the outcome you're looking for with the lights? Well, the outcome they want is they want an increased tenant experience. Maybe they want to increase the retention of their tenants if they lease space. Maybe they're commercial real estate. Maybe they have a huge portfolio of buildings, and the outcome they're looking for is truly energy savings. They want to reduce the amount of time lights are on. Could that affect the way you approach the integration? Would you go about looking at it from a different perspective? If you know that the outcome is to increase tenant experience, to make tenants happy, then that is going to affect how you do graphics. That's going to affect what points you allow them to have access to, versus if purely it's just, hey, I want to turn the lights on when the building's occupied, that way I can go and save energy. That is a whole nother approach that you need to be aware of. So ultimately, what outcome is the customer looking for? That's what you need to find out. Now, that outcome definitely will tie to the why, but it is different than the why, and you need to understand that because it influences the why, And as we'll see, it will also influence the how. So at this point, we have the why of the integration. We have the outcome of the integration. And now we move on to what are the user preferences for the integration. Now you may be saying to yourself, what do you mean user preferences? And that's a good question to be asking yourself, because there's multiple different users, right? You have the users who are going to operate the facility. In the case of if you're trying to improve tenant experience, then you have the users who are going to use the mobile application or the mobile graphics on their phone. You have the users who are going to have to support this. Maybe it's outsourced service, maybe it's internal service of this integration. So what are their preferences? This is what you need to understand. So for example, if you have a huge amount of buildings, a ton of buildings, and their goal is to save energy by going and scheduling the lights when the building's occupied, then the user preference for the facilities group may look like they are simply going and having a single page that has the status of all the building's lights commands. And that may be their user preference. If you're looking for tenant experience, the user preference may be that they have light command and they have light level, and maybe they have light color, and you have these in a horizontal stack or a vertical stack, and you may be saying, but Phil, won't this be in the spec? Oftentimes, all you'll get in the specification, and those of you who have been doing integration for a while, you've seen this firsthand. All you'll get is lighting to be integrated by others, or lighting contractor to coordinate with BAS contractor, or lighting to be BACnet IP and to map in the following points. But quite often you won't get details on the actual user preferences. And this is kind of a conundrum, because what you could do, and you would be perfectly fine, is to integrate the lighting system, pull in the points you think you need, and call it a day. Like I said, the commissioning agent will most likely go and say, hey, this is good, you've brought in the system, you brought in the... Because you'll run into a fair amount of commissioning agents who, they don't understand what I'm teaching you, and that's not a right, wrong, or kind of dig against commissioning agents. It's just their primary focus is on control sequences. And integration is just kind of this thing that gets lumped in there, and it quite often just becomes a check the box kind of thing. Oh, do you have the lights integrated? Yeah. Can you show me the points? Yeah. Do they turn on and off the lights? Let's go check real quick. Oh, yeah. Okay, you're good to go. They don't go and look at the user preferences. I mean, heck, half the time on just regular building automation systems, we don't look at the user preferences for graphics. We don't look at the user preferences for how they want to navigate the system, those kind of things. And, you know, you could effectively argue that that's just as much an owner requirement as it is a technician or an engineer requirement. The owner should set up their standards, and I would agree that you'd be right. But at the same time, realize that that may happen when it comes to BAS, that people lay out their preferences. When it comes to integration, that almost never happens. So what are the preferences? Because if you're trying to avoid callbacks, and that is kind of the curse, because here's the cool thing, integration, and folks don't like to admit this, but you quite often make more work on integration projects if you know what you're doing. It has a higher perceived value, and it should have a higher perceived value than just, you know, a cookie cutter plan and spec job where you're just plugging in some basic programs that you don't even need to alter. Maybe need to change a couple logic blocks, and that's it. But integration often is more complex, and with that complexity comes greater profit, because it's just like if you were to go and build a cookie cutter home, you're going to make less profit, but you're going to do a lot more of those cookie cutter homes. Versus a custom home, you're going to make more profit with the custom homes because you're going to be doing less volume of custom homes. So with integration, you're going to be doing more and more work, and thus justifying greater profit. Now, here's the thing, as I was saying, if you don't understand user preferences, you're going to be brought back during the warranty phase, and that is just going to becoming this all-consuming monster that just eats your profit margin. It just devours it. I've seen it time and time again. And one of the greatest ways you can hedge this, we've already went through, is understanding why, understanding the outcome, and then understanding the user preferences. Because if it's easy for the user to use and it's meeting their why and delivering the outcome, 9 times out of 10, you're not going to get a callback. Versus it could be functioning perfectly fine, but if it's not intuitive for the user to use, it's just something that is different than what they're used to working with, you're going to get calls even though stuff is working just fine. And as we all know, trying to debate a warranty call with an owner, I mean, you can do it, you can win those debates, but it's one of those things where you win the debate, but then no one wins because you got a pissed off customer, which then pisses off the GC and the mechanical, and it just makes it all sorts of ugly all around. Okay, so you've got that. So that's number 3. Next, you want to ask yourself, who will support the integration? And this is where things start to fall apart for a lot of folks. They get the why sometimes. They usually get the outcome, and occasionally they get the user preferences. But they don't think about who's going to support the integration. Because, right, wrong, or indifferent, we just think of integrations. Oftentimes, a lot of folks who are even doing the integrations, they just kind of fall into the integrations. You just keep messing with something until it finally gets mapped in, and you're like, oh, I got it working. Don't touch it. No one touch the integration. We've got it working. Just never touch this thing. Never even go to... Actually, I'm going to delete this page so you can never even access it. And just leave it alone. That's how a lot of folks approach integrations. And that's too bad, because that's why you'll go to a lot of quote-unquote integrated buildings and you'll realize that a couple years afterwards, the integrations, they're either disabled, they're in hand, they've been replaced, another contractor's been brought in because that integrated stuff didn't work. And so now you're sitting there with these kind of dilemmas of, hey, how do I go and support this integration? Because I don't want to be getting my controls replaced or have a bad name for my company because I can't take folks to this site to showcase how we did integration because the integration doesn't work. So this is where support comes into play. And supporting integrations is always a little difficult. And the reason why it's difficult is not so much the technical ability to support the integration. I mean, heck, you got it installed in the first place. If you go about going and just making sure you have enough hours set aside post-warranty to service it, then you're going to be solid. It's more of the, hey, is it my fault? Is it your fault? Who's watching this software? Who's making sure that when they update the lighting software, it doesn't break the integration? They don't accidentally delete the device IDs. And so when I say supporting integration, it's more of a process than actually going and making sure someone supports it. It's more of making sure we have a good process to support it. Now, what do I mean by a good process to support it? And this is something I unpack in both my Building Automation Fundamentals course as well as in my IT course. When I talk about systems integration, I talk about the process behind supporting it. And the thing about supporting integration after you've done it is that you need to have a cadence, for one, to make sure stuff still works. That's like level 1 basic obvious, right? We want to check every 6 months that it's still working, something like that. And the frequency depends on the importance of the integration. If it's something like lights, where if the integration's broke, I'm not going to have lights turned on, then that would probably be something you want to check more often than, hey, I'm just going and trying to look at my occupancy so that way I can go and schedule rooms from the classroom scheduler and not just from the BAS. I mean, you can still schedule the rooms, it's just the integration doesn't work. Kind of different levels of importance, and importance is subjective. But what you really want to focus in on, once you get past that, hey, we've got the basic cadence in place, you want to focus in on saying, hey, all right, we've got this integration. Let's put a process in place that if we ever service any of these systems, one, we have it documented how they're supposed to work and how they're set up. You'd be shocked, or maybe you wouldn't be shocked, how many sites do not have basic documentation. It's beyond me that they don't have it, but they don't. So that's the first thing. But the second thing is you want to go and make sure that you have a process in place for whenever anything's upgraded, whenever anything's patched, whenever anything's serviced, that you are going and making sure that it still works, that the integration still works. And so you would create a checkout process to make sure it works, and you would then go and monitor those. And maybe if you want to kind of take it to level 3 seriousness here, you can go and set up alarms and things like that on the actual integrated points, integrated objects, and have those alerts automatically be sent to the service provider or ultimately whoever supports it. And that then is going to go and make sure that this integration lasts a long time. So there you have it. Those are kind of 4 questions you want to ask. Why are we doing the integration? What outcome are we looking for with the integration? What are the user's preferences for the integration? And then who's going to support that integration? Now, there is one more thing that you're going to want to do. And this is something I see very, very, very few people do it. I mean, I see people, as I mentioned, you start to decline as you start to go through these questions, right? So a lot of folks will ask, why are we doing the integration? Then some folks will say, well, what's the outcome? I mean, the salespeople usually know this, but as far as technical people, not so much. They'll understand the outcome. And that outcome, as I mentioned earlier, relates to the why. Then, a couple less people will do the user preferences, and even less than that will do support. But the one that very few people do, and this is kind of disappointing because if you're someone who, there's this old saying that it costs more to get a new customer than it does to keep the ones you have. And as a business owner who provides building automation training to BAS professionals, that's very true. I deliver an amazing experience to my students to the point where they are seeing massive growth and success in their careers and in their teams, in the case of managers who are putting their teams through my training. And it is a lot easier for me to make sure my students are successful and focus on that than sitting there trying to get new customers again and again. That's why 70% of my students are going and purchasing every new course I come out with. Now, what does that have to do with you? Well, that has everything to do with you, because if you are someone who installs, someone who services, someone who sells BAS, it is a lot easier for you to go through those 4 questions, make sure you have a supported integration, and then every year or so revisit that integration, see if the outcome that they're trying to achieve is still being needed. And here's the kicker. Then you go in and you understand, is there possibly some other systems that could be integrated to make this outcome even better? Or is this outcome so successful at building 1 that we want to take it to building 2, 3, and 4? There are so many people who are sitting on literally gold mines of projects that they don't ever touch. And the beauty of these projects are that if you get into the owner and talk to them about that, oftentimes these are budgets that are separated from the traditional budgets that you are limited in how much you can access. Because, for example, let's say that you have an energy budget and you just threw in the lighting integration as part of a construction project. So that was a capital budget, right? That's something that is allocated and planned for 5 years in advance in most cases. But now you have this kind of energy manager budget, and it's a smaller budget, yes, but it's a budget nonetheless. And now if you're going and you're asking these 4 questions and you're staying on top of things and you're developing a relationship with the energy manager saying, hey, Are we achieving the outcomes? Are you achieving what you want? They're like, yeah, we're really getting where we need to be. This is pretty awesome. And then you say to that person, okay, well, imagine if we're getting where you need to be here, and this is kind of what it costs to get there. What if we took it to 3 other buildings? We're already seeing the ROI. We can project the ROI. Obviously, nothing's guaranteed unless you're an ESCO company, which that's a whole nother topic that I'm not going to dive into. But nothing's guaranteed. However, at the same time, you've got a track record of success. You've supported the customer. They've come to trust you. The integration's useful. It's meeting their user preferences. You've got a great story to tell to go have access to that energy manager's budget. So then that person can go and justify giving you another project. And you're not doing this just to get money, because ultimately at the end of the day, if you're not helping, that's going to become readily apparent, and that's not a good place to be. But what you are doing, if this integration really is resulting in success for the customer, then you should want to help them take it throughout their organization, right? I mean, we should really care about our customers. If my students are seeing success with a course, then I'm going to want to tell everyone about that, because I want folks to succeed. And it may seem like, oh man, all he does is talk about this, but if it's successful and it's helping folks, then you should be talking about it. So if you legitimately and the customer legitimately are succeeding, or seeing, that's succeeding and seeing put together into a single word. But if the customer and you are succeeding and seeing success, I guess that's redundant, right? If that is all coming together, then what you want to do is you want to find a way to help them do more of that, because ultimately your goal is to make your customers successful. I know that I meet so many building automation professionals who we think all we do is control temperature. All we do is make sure we do the sequence of operations. But what we are doing, we are helping customers be successful. We need to change our mindset in that in K through 12 schools, we are going and making it so the CO2 level is controlled, so students aren't passing out in class. We're making sure that the temperature is right so that they can actually be in class. I mean, I heard this one story about these schools where students were literally bringing in their own heaters, and they had no heat in the classrooms. And I mean, it was 50 degrees in a classroom. Could you imagine a 50-degree classroom for kindergartners? I mean, that definitely affects the learning environment. So if you're able to help them solve that, that should be your goal as a building automation technician or a salesperson, is to think, how can I help this person do their business better? Because if you help them succeed with that, you will literally have a repeat customer. I've yet to meet customers, I'm sure they're out there, but I've met a lot more customers who are saying, hey, this person, it really understands my business. They make recommendations to help me go and do things. And because of that, even though they may not be the cheapest, I'm not going to go replace them. Now, I know there's some of you out there who are probably bitter and are like, oh, that's not true. I'm amazing, and my customer replaced me because so-and-so was $1 less than me. Okay, maybe that I'm willing to bet that there's probably a little more to that story going on, and maybe you weren't really as close with that customer as you thought you were. Now, I know we totally went on a trail and a journey away from integration, but this is something that both for sales professionals as well as technical professionals, you really need to embrace this mentality. I mean, this is what allows you to justify higher rates. This is what allows you to grow your business. This is what makes you an amazing tech, where folks want you on the job site. Not to toot my own horn, but pretty much every guy who was on my service team back when I was leading a service team, each one of them, their customers wanted only them. And granted, that creates a little bit of a problem when you're trying to run a service organization, but at the same time, that's pretty freaking awesome that the customers loved this person so much that they wanted them on the job site. They were looked at as part of the customer's family. And that's when you're not so much worrying about your price and if your quote's perfect, because you're looked at as part of the family. All right, so a lot to unpack here, a lot of stuff. These are just, I really wanted to go there on the end because I've just been feeling that lately, reading some stuff on Facebook, reading stuff on LinkedIn that I just felt was really, really company focused and it wasn't customer focused. And then folks are wondering why customers don't have loyalty when they're out there talking about their latest whiz bang whatever, and that has nothing to frickin' do with the customer. And so that was something that was just in my heart that I wanted to talk about. It's been weighing on me lately. So, with that being said, let's just recap real quick from this episode. So, as I mentioned, you got to understand why you're doing the integration. And that why is around the use case, not the outcome. Then you want to understand the outcome. What outcome are you looking for? What are you trying to achieve? From there, we look at the user preferences, kind of how do the users want to use this integration, and finally, who will support the integration. And then I added that last little tip about, is the integration still working? Is it meeting its outcomes? And if it is, how do we go and take it to the next level? So that is what we're covering in this episode. Thank you so much for listening. Everything that I discussed, you can find out at buildingautomationmonthly.com/107. Once again, that is buildingautomationmonthly.com/107. And if you're a building automation professional, there is something I really want you to check out, and it's my Control Sequence Fundamentals course. I'll link to it in the show notes. I'm telling you, I have not gotten the level of feedback I've gotten from any other course like I have from this course. I knew coming in, just with my own experience, that control sequences seems to be the biggest area that a lot of BAS folks struggle with. Hey, I don't have an HVAC background. Hey, I'm not a mechanic. Or I can't find people who can do controls but also understand how systems should work. And it seems to be like that capability is just leaving our industry. But that's what this course addresses. And it is so exciting to me to watch the light bulbs going off in these students as they're going through and understanding why we do control sequences the way we do it, why we do certain control scenarios and parameters the way we do it. And so if that is something that would benefit you, if you understanding how HVAC systems work and how you control them with a building automation system, if that is something that would help you to be a better salesperson, better technician, better engineer, then I really encourage you to go check out that program. This program is amazing. And I've gotten this question a lot lately, and I don't know why, but obviously I'm not messaging this good enough. All of my programs, when you purchase them, they are a lifetime access, and from the moment you purchase the program, you log in and you have access to all of the videos for that program. It's an on-demand program, and for the lifetime of the program, you can go and re-log in and watch the videos again and again and again. Try finding any class in this world where you can go and learn building automation and just watch the videos again and again. No, you've got to take notes and hope you're 100% caffeinated and paying attention, because if you miss something, that moment's gone. Whereas with online training, you don't have that problem. So if you want to learn more about that, which I really encourage you to do, then definitely check out buildingautomationmonthly.com/107 and you'll see a link to that course. Thank you so much for being here. In next week's episode, we're going to go through a couple examples of this whole process. We're going to talk through what it would look like, what questions we would ask, and then we're going to close up this series on systems integration. Thanks so much for being here. If you have any questions, comments, thoughts, just reply on buildingautomationmonthly.com/107 at the bottom of the page. Just click the reply button and let me know in the comments. Thanks so much for being here, and I'll talk to you all again next week. Take care.